much, Daniel, and I'm just really glad to be reading here. I used to come to this series back when I was living in Toronto, and it was just really exciting to be on this side for a change. And yeah, thank you again so much for inviting me to read, and thanks for coming. It's really lovely to be back after 3 years of being away, and both real and surreal, and it's just super awesome too. So yeah. The first poem I'm reading is called East of Error. The world wasn't created in the span of one mistake. First there was heaven, then heaven and earth, then mortal earth, then the flood. In my kitchen, a small galaxy of Cheerios spill at the touch of an elbow, and I accept with a sponge the divine decree that made us human, mostly. I just don't see why it has to be hard to be wrong. Nature isn't a very useful explanation for regret. If a squirrel carves a hole in our hallway ceiling, it has no duty to repair it. The yellow leaf of a tree harbors no notion of perfection. Improvement, however, surveys my first causes in a wide sun hat and dark glasses, noting the shape of what could have been if I tried. We're on our fifth sun and second earth by the Aztec calendar, our last chance to live on a planet limping by on its ninth life. I can't help wanting the choices I should have had. Neither can I choose what I want. So yeah, as Daniel mentioned, I do not have copies of the book tonight because I'm very disorganized. But also, if you talk to me afterwards, I can arrange to get a copy to you somewhere or another, or come to the launch on Wednesday. There is a way to get a book to you. I assure you. So part of the book deals with sort of both sides of my family. One side, my dad's side, originates from Norway, and this is a big part of how he thinks of his heritage and his history. And my other side, my mom's side, comes from Hong Kong, and they immigrated to Canada in the 60s. So I've written poems about sort of both sides of how they mythologize that history. I'm going to read one that's about my mom's side of the family, and growing up with the kind of mythologies and sort of cultural expectations that come along with, I guess, being part of an immigrant family. So it's called Mythological Dinner. We order steamed fish for the moon goddess. My grandmother's prayers to the Lord flap like dried eel from the low chandeliers. Oh, lead me to his house. I am far from home. Tonight we are heathens in a restaurant dining in an English-tongue town, and my grandfather's spirit pounds the table for another sing-sao for our guest's glass. A toast to her lunar highness. She smiles behind fan starlight. We sip from teacups kissed by a rabbit's 5-leaf foot, lick moon dust off chopsticks. I don't pretend to understand. My grandfather, a barber, died 10 years ago from work. My grandmother spends her evening cleaning her doorstep with bleach, keeps her heart ironed in an ebony box. What's real isn't, what isn't is. When my grandparents bartered their mythology for a passport, they minted us steel souls in the great foundries of the West. I'm as vile as a gull chasing a temporary ship, hoping for a scrap to ease my geographic hunger. I sprinkle my history in chicken salt. I crow in the language of broken chimes. My ancestors lurk on jumped islands, draped comets, have cut the hair of English lords. I'd like to explain, but for most I want to be citizen of the moon. When the goddess swipes her greased lips and looks at me with gilded eyes, I'll kneel at her side and pray to stop the sun from rising. Oh, make me foreign to homesickness and exile. Make me a crown of stars. I'd like to be where you're from. Okay. This is a poem to Marion Moore's Hat. Marion Moore was an American mid-century poet whom I deeply admire, but I also feel very conflicted about admiring at the same time. So this is kind of me trying to work through that feeling. To Marion Moore's Hat. Empire's cap, Puritan's third eye. Your geometry cut her passage like the prow of an antique ship. A sea-hand's device leveled at the horizon's white vest, like the sextant or Pythagorean mathematics, sizing up the airs when triangles sailed us nearest the mind's continents. Raven rigged to a moral armature, black cat pickled in formaldehyde of a universal observation. mascot to the Marine Scouts who ate the soil of another's land and believed their tears watered all people's hearts. Lost towns speckled their eyes. Mountains shouldered the names of their dead generals. Dark periscope, 5-inch velvet ledge, cannon trained on enemy brigantines or conspiring like a horned formula for an intellect. Of course I dislike it. Of course it's personal, even as it crowns anybody whose skull fits the hole, for whom beauty follows the obsession with order and truth. Captain's design, nation's crest. Without you, I am lost. With you, I murder the countryless. So part of the book is set in Toronto, and part of it is also in Vancouver, of course. So I'm going to read 2 more poems. One is the title poem, East and West, and it is set in Vancouver. East and West. I find in myself a culture whose language, like the idea of affection, responds imperfectly or not at all to another's. Points of comparison trade gunshots in the civic core. In a glass city, accents procreate a deeper misunderstanding, and a suburban teen knifes another in a bored rage at the subway station. I can't reconcile our loneliness among differences. It drives us to the shoreline with the belief that the better life exceeds us. White wings slant westward from the tidal flats along Second Beach. In the middle ground, species thrive in the violence between elements. Stay anywhere long enough, the contradictions resemble love. So this is the last poem. It's called All Hours Are Present. And I think this poem is one that resonates with me more deeply. I was talking with Phoebe about the poems that we don't like to read anymore because we don't feel the emotions that we really felt when we were writing them. And this one, I feel like, does speak to me still, and I think in part it's because we're dealing with a time when there's so much political division between different groups and different parties. And this poem was sort of me trying to work out like that experience, as well as like sort of the internal sense of being divided too. All hours are present. Between the future and the past, all hours are present. Between neighbors of opposing political views, arguments will inevitably arise over the narrow strip of territory that joins them. An event once done is done. It had its purpose. It's shelved in a hobbyist's garage now, its use enthusiastically predicted but not yet reinvented. It is not what it was. In the same way, a bus, identical to its predecessor and its rattling hallway of silent passengers, opens doors imperceptibly different to each. Causes you cannot change lead you back to the start of the line, the weight of former summers pressing your forehead to the safety handles. What certainty you have in change is a ticket for this route. It will have consequence. That's the future's claim, an ability to hope which has bred herds of shining vehicles, the vanishing point at the end of the mind. The will and active strategy for grid lines where a left-turning signal still means left in the total mobile world of roadwork and heartbreaks. Either way, nor where you come from, changes that purpose. Its movement is its passage. Its passage is the parting between two shores. Thank you. Woo!